passion, aggression, ignorance, or grasping, pushing away and spacing out at the root of our individual existence. They are the source code for how we exist as an individual.
Welcome to The Vital Point. I'm Jonathan Schecter, breathwork facilitator, integration coach, and fellow traveler on the path of healing and growth. This show is here to inspire real action in your life, whether you're just beginning or deep on your journey. You'll hear practical tools, guided practices, and conversations with those walking the path. Because the truth is, transformation only happens through practice. That's the vital point. So take a deep breath. Let's begin. My guest has been on the podcast before. This is his third appearance, in fact. My guest today is David Nichtern. David is a senior teacher in the lineage of renowned Tibetan Buddhist meditation master Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He was one of the initial American students of Trungpa Rinpoche and studied closely with him soon after his arrival in the United States in 1970. He is the founder of Dharma Moon. That's where I first got to know David a little bit better, although the first time I encountered him was in his role in Duncan Trussell's The Midnight Gospel. And then I started listening to some of Duncan's podcasts that featured David and decided to sign up for the Dharma Moon Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Training. He's also a well-known composer, producer, and guitarist, a 4-time Emmy winner and 2-time Grammy nominee, and also produced multiple records for and toured with Grammy-nominated Kirtan performer Krishna Das. He's the author of Awakening from the Daydream and Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck, and has a podcast called the Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck podcast. Today it just felt like two people having a really nice discussion. We talked about AI and consciousness and Buddha nature and how that intersects with the Stanislav Grof perspective of the inner healer. We talked about some of the things that are the subject of his first book, Awakening from the Daydream, where the idea of these different realms in Buddhism are reflected in our different states as human beings, our states of suffering or our states of bliss, and how that really connects to the psychedelic world and maybe people that are a little bit in that God realm themselves of spiritual bypassing. And of course, David sprinkled in some great nuggets from his teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and some of the other lamas that he's had the chance to be around and to learn from. And, I feel really grateful that I've been able to be around David and learn from him. He's got a new iteration, a new cohort of the Dharma Moon Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Training that's starting on June 13th. You can sign up for that at Dharma Moon website, and we'll put the link for that on the show page as well. Appreciate you being here, and hope you enjoy this conversation with David Nichtern. Well, David Nichtern, welcome back to the Vital Point podcast. So great to have you back.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's so great to be welcomed back to something.
Isn't
Coming
that
back
nice?
is a good thing. I know everybody's going forward, but sometimes it's nice to go back.
I've really enjoyed having, repeat people. I feel like it deepens the conversation. It's not like, hey, we're getting to know you, Yeah. And I feel like for you especially, it's like, this is my once a year. I know I get to check in with David and hear some wisdom, and really it helps me reflect on my life, actually.
Well, that's very kind of you. And of course, you don't have to wait a year to check in.
How was your retreat? I know you just got done with that. And
it's time just keeps. I introduced a new phrase at the retreat. At the end of each session, I said, we're walking out of time. Because everybody says we're running out of time. and I want to start walking out of time, but you're going to be out of time whether you run or walk, either way. So it feels like a long time ago already, the retreat. So much has happened since then. I think getting together the Dharma Moon community live in person is has a special kind of feeling to it, and it's almost like you feel the details of things more graphically when you're with people live. You know, there's a beautiful thing about virtual, which is that you get the span and the arc of the thing, but it's grittier live, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've had that experience myself. Like in the last year, I've been doing a lot of trainings, and some of them have been online, and some of them have been in person, and especially the ones that are in retreat, as opposed to you're showing up in a conference room every day and then going back to a hotel room
Yeah,
and doing your own thing for dinner, and then everyone's coming back together. There's something so magical about being in retreat with people, and
yeah,
really, getting in the weeds with them, right? You're all in the trenches together, and it's a really nice thing.
wonderful.
Yeah, I've done a lot of holotropic breath work in that way since the last time we've been talking, which has been great. Yeah, so walking at a time. I think when I hear that, I think of being present. What does it mean for you?
So this is a great launch for a topic. The idea of being present and being here now, and how many different traditions that are contemplative, at least the contemplative ones, emphasize that quality of tuning in to the present situation and allowing the clouds of past remorse, future anxiety to dissipate in the vividness and brilliance of the present situation and clarity of it. However, so you would say there's the past, the present, and the future, the three times. Sometimes they call that the three times. So there's something in Buddhism called the fourth time,
Mm.
which or the fourth moment. And that is this: there is no present. It's gone already. The minute you go, I'm present, and you
Right.
delineate some experience that is, let's say, either conceptual or contrast to some other form of experience, you're way out of the present already. So the fourth moment is the actual ungraspable present. You can't say be here now. You can't say you can't identify anything about it. It's sort of like being hit with a stun gun, and instead of it knocking you out, it wakes you up.
Yeah. There's a I think a long tradition of sort of pointing out those moments in Buddhism, right? Like the Zen monk getting slapped into enlightenment by his master's shoe.
Yeah,
And I know you talked about that in one of the classes that I took with you, where that moment where you're almost startled, or
yeah,
we've all had that Zen nod in meditation where we like kind of fall
yeah.
asleep all of a sudden, and there's like a clarity in that moment when
How
you
about we've
kind of
had that,
pop back
Jonathan,
up.
when how about that we've had that when we're driving a car? You go, I think I'll just
Mm.
take a little nap here. You know what? You can
Right.
literally see your mind go like, oh, well, I'm really tired. So, I'm just going to close my eyes for just a second. And then it's like, so, you remember this, Jonathan, we call it suddenly free from fixed mind in the Shambhala.
Yes.
That's a beautiful iteration of the fourth moment, actually.
Mm. Yeah.
Suddenly free from fixed mind. And there's a combination of some very strong feedback in it, and also relaxing. It's a weirdest combination of being very relaxed and very alert at the same time.
Yeah. Is there a way to cultivate that? Because I feel like there's so many students that come to meditation and they want something out of it. They want to see progress, or they want to attain something, and oftentimes I'm inviting them to just give up on that.
Yeah,
Like you just have to do the practice for the practice, and then something might happen. But
yeah.
if you're trying to get somewhere, if I say don't think of a pink elephant,
Yeah.
You know?
Well, one of my teachers recently was describing how they met their teacher, and he thought he was fairly accomplished at that point, and the teacher just looked at him and said, completely hopeless, and wouldn't teach him, which is very old school Zen. These days, with the marketing and the thing, nobody says like, I don't think there's a chance in hell of you ever doing this. So why don't we both stop kidding ourselves here? So
Right.
that's a kind of like a level that obviously, if it's misapplied, could be abusive. So we have to be mindful of that. But there's a kind of scraping away of expectation and hope. And Trungpa Rinpoche also used to say, it's completely hopeless. And also, he talked about the chatteling effect, the enslaving effect of hope and fear as the partners. It's like if
Yeah.
it was a law firm, it'd be Hope and Fear LLC. They come together because as soon as you hope something, you're afraid that it's not going to be.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, but all this can be sophistry, or it can be like bringing a sense of humor to your practice. Maybe it's all that you need at a certain point.
Hmm. I like that. Yeah. The all the teachers that I respect have some sort of humor,
Yeah.
infused in their essence. They're not taking it too seriously.
I mean, Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, if it's not funny, it's not Buddhism. And we don't mean that, to be clear. And you mentioned the six realms, awakening from the daydream. The animal realm humor is not what we're talking about. You just get out a joke to dispel tension.
Sure.
But that sense of appreciating the irony of the situation is precious in a way. It's cool too. And the minute it becomes a shtick, then you got to watch out.
Yeah, because it can become a different form of bypassing, right? Like, oh, now we're not fixated on the suffering. Now we're fixated on the humor or the beauty of all of it.
Yeah. Our mind has little suction cups and wants to grab onto something, because the other thing is kind of a free fall, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's one of my favorite Trungpa quotes, right?
Oh, the
The
parachute.
the bad news is you're falling through the air and there's nothing to hold on to, and the good news is there's no ground.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have a certain mindset for that not to become the tricky thing about anything like that, which is pointing to the emptiness factor, is that it can just make a slight left into nihilism and cynicism.
Yeah.
That like, it should be like, remember Mad Magazine, or were you too young to have Mad
No, I
Magazine?
remember. Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's this character, Alfred E. Newman, with the gap tooth thing and the
Uh-huh.
stupid grin on the front. And it would be the lighter side of something was a
Uh-huh.
was a riff that they had going on there. So what's the lighter side of trying to practice, of trying to attain something? The lighter side of it is that you can't really.
Mm. Right. There's no escape.
Yeah, but then that could
It's
become cynical. You go, well, why
right.
bother?
Yeah.
So that's a tricky balance, right, Jonathan? Don't you think?
I do. And it's a hard thing to, at least for me, to explain or to kind of get across to people, especially a lot of the people that I'm working with. And so that's, usually I just say, hey, just practice. Like, you don't go to the gym the first day and expect to be throwing up, Olympic level weights, right? You gotta put the reps in. You
Yeah,
just gotta go and sort of forget about uh the outcome, or abandon all hope of fruition.
yeah.
Is a good one that I like.
We don't have too many examples of people we admire and respect who didn't practice a lot.
Yes.
Maybe there's some kind of spontaneous awakening, but one could argue that maybe from previous karmas coming ripening on the spot. But I have that my friend Julian Lodge, who's a great guitar player, and I said, "How are you doing this?" Because it's almost inexplicable how gifted and how skilled he is, and wonderful too, as a musician and a person. And then he just was practicing like 12 or 15 hours a day when he was 8 years old.
Yeah.
That's a little prodigal. Not all of us are going to be able to map to that, but I don't know anybody that I admire and respect who didn't have like some kind of density in their approach, and formality in it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And the folks like that, well, maybe not in the music world, but as far as spirituality, a lot of the time, I think they're getting drowned out by the folks that are so loud or have a big marketing budget, or they're good at getting the clicks, right? Like hey, abandon all hope of fruition doesn't get a lot of
No.
get a lot of traffic, right?
Yeah. Noise is inexpensive.
Yeah.
If you want to like get an orchestra together and just say, okay, everybody just play exactly anything you want, and we'll record it. It's cheap, you could do that in real time. So yeah, I think I have to usually hold the line for more formality. But here's a tricky point: is being very super mindful about cultural containers for different things that you're interested in, and not mistaking the cultural container for what's contained therein.
Oh yeah.
We got a long way to go in the America, or the West, let's say in general, how to create forms that are appropriate for us, that carry the deeper meaning of some of the Buddhist and other traditions. It's happened before, Jonathan. That's the good news.
Yeah.
These things have been. You go to Japan, you went like, guess what? There was no Buddhism in Japan, and then there was, but it was 1,200 years ago or whatever.
Right.
And now it's got deep, rich forms, and you go there as a Westerner, and you go like, you want to be part of that, but you're not going to quite fit in. Mm-hmm. You can do your best, and some people have done amazing jobs at like assimilating, but at some point you go back home and you're going to be speaking in English. You're going to be talking to people who live like how we live, and the form has to evolve organically from the culture, and vice versa.
I can appreciate that, and it's one thing that I appreciate about you and Dharma Moon is even with Tibetan teachers that I've studied with, there's such a difference in the ones that speak English versus the ones that are speaking through a translator. There's something where they can get the point across in a different way. And so I appreciate folks like you, or, I was telling you before we hit record how much I enjoyed the podcast you did with Lama Rod Owens, where
Sure.
it is a part of our culture and the American culture, not just sort of putting on the chuba, putting on the Tibetan robe, and,
sure.
Having the mala, and, don't point your feet at the altar, because that's what the Tibetans don't do. Right.
Well, that's interesting. You're picking out that, because there are certain natural forms or aspects to forms that any intelligent person would come to on their own, like don't stick your feet. I mean, it's like your grandmother's wisdom, right? Don't stick your feet in somebody's face. It's like, and in it's more articulated in our tradition. We talk about La, Nien, and Lu domains. The three domains. And there's one of the chances: don't put your in the place of law. Don't put Lu. Don't put your hat on your feet. Don't put your feet on your head. It's sort of natural wisdom, but it can be formalized.
Yeah,
and you can feel it when it's off. It just feels like,
yeah. I have one of my best friends, his wife is Hispanic. And when I came back from Tibet, she would get so upset because one day, tell me what Tibet was like. And, after you get done talking about the big things, one day I was talking about how Tibetans point with their mouth. Like, they might go like, they're like, it's over there. And she,
I didn't know that.
And she would, like, her skin would start to crawl. And I said, well, what's going on? She said, in Hispanic culture, that means something totally different.
Mm.
Right. And so, we were good enough friends that even her husband, who's like one of my, oldest friends, we would kind of do it to each other, right? Just to get a rise out of
Hmm.
her. But yeah,
That's
different
funny.
in different cultures, right? Things are different.
Oh
And
yeah. I mean,
a
what about
a Tibetan person
yeah.
wouldn't think about it at all.
Right.
Like it's just over there.
And aren't there's some cultures I've heard that you have to belch after a good meal, or otherwise they don't think you appreciate
Ah, okay. Yeah, no, I can get behind that.
it. Yeah, I'll do it anyhow, but it could actually be a compliment to the chef as well. Certain
Yeah.
settings. Yeah,
Yeah.
culture is a big deal, and Dharma Moon. That's a big part of the generating vibe of Dharma Moon is that integration into culture. And I just to share this with everybody, we started a second company called Strawberry Moons Media, and I started that with my partner Debbie Nutley in that. And you can go to YouTube and subscribe to the three channels in Strawberry Moons Media, and I'm going to invite everybody to do that. We're starting to put up a whole media platform based on sort of dharmic principles or threads going through the culture. So one is for kids, and Debbie writes these great children's books that are about these two penguins, Penguin and Ruby, who kind of use mindfulness of breath or energy regulation at the child level. How do you introduce it to children? And that's the For Kids channels, Strawberry Moon's Media for Kids. And then there's the uh, kind of Dharma Life channel. That is excerpts from things like this. We might put a clip from something like this on it, or from Dharma Moon teaching, or from affiliated people like Angie Cho has a flower arranging playlist on it. And then the third one, the third channel on Strawberry Moon's Media is called Meditainment.
Mm,
And the idea of that one is like, is there something that you could watch or experience that is entertainment? It would go in that bin, but it's Dharma too. It has some kind of thread of of the wisdom or presence or sacredness of that world. So I'm writing for that one. I have been writing for quite a while, a bluegrass Buddhist animated musical, and it's called Zach Mooney's Dream. Like Zach Mooney is a contemporary take on Shakyamuni. It's a young guy in Kentucky. All the music is like Americana bluegrass music, and he gets to a certain point in his journey, and he says, goes to his wife and his small kid, says, I'm not making it here. I'm just doing the family business here. In the law firm. And he just says, I've got to go. And this is leaving the palace moment of a mirror of that. And then instead of going out into the jungle, he goes to New York City and tries to figure out what's going on. And he meets a teacher there, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea of the media aspect, it's sort of the media wing of Dharma Moon, is to present out there into the world materials that will magnetize people towards wanting to find out more about all this, or
that's
just
great.
enjoying it where it is, but invading our culture, basically.
That's such a great idea. And I love the modern day take on
Yeah.
the Buddha's life.
Well, check it out, Jonathan. You go to Strawberry Moon's Media on YouTube,
Yeah.
and that all and everybody just scoot around there. There's quite a few videos already up in those three categories.
Yeah.
And then if you like it, subscribe and tell us you like it. But we have a kind of fairly hefty plan in mind for developing that, because that's our way to reach out into the bigger culture that we're in without always pushing, meditation per se.
That's great. Yeah. Does Zach Mooney use social media?
Oh, that's funny you're saying that, because I sort of visualize it, maybe because I started working on it like 15 years ago when social media was not such a big deal. So maybe I have to figure out, did it really take place maybe in the aughts or in the 90s, or if it was right now, like, I think I'm going to make it a little further back in time, because otherwise it's just going to be it's going to get swallowed up into this kind of AI world.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. So I know you've spoken on and off about AI and your interest in it. I recently created a GPT based on Suzuki Roshi, and I fed it Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, and
Which it ate in 1 second, right?
Right, which it ate in 1 second.
Yeah.
But yeah, I literally said, "Hey, you are the channeled consciousness of Zen Master Suzuki Roshi, and I don't want you to give me the fluffy Chat GPT, answers. I just want you to be a Zen master." And so I'm having a really interesting experience, dialoguing with this with AI in that way, and it's I got the idea from kids, actually, like reading about how the younger generation is using AI and how it's different from maybe my generation or your generation, or like how we're using it, digesting it differently. So it's a little bit of an experiment.
And it is, like many other folks these days, I'm curious about whatever's happening.
Yeah.
I'm not very nostalgic as a person. I mean, sometimes it's sweet, you remember something and it really had real valence for you and real heart. But by and large, I like to keep up with what the latest stuff is that's going on. And so I watch a lot of sci-fi with AI in it. And there's some of it that's very intriguing. But I'm also tracking it. And we also did when Duncan we did a podcast in which we talked about AI and why you might still need a real teacher. And he did that with Trungpa Rinpoche. What you did with Suzuki Roshi, he did it with Trungpa Rinpoche. And we asked it the questions, and then it sort of simulated a tone, I think, like, and whether or not it has the capacity to go deeper into the, this is like, what it's going to be like exactly, Jonathan? It's going to be like Naropa, the great Buddhist scholar at Nalanda University. He's walking around the university and he's like the great big Buddhist scholar there. And Niguma, this is the sister of Tilopa, who ends up being his guru, manifests as a kind of old witchy kind of character. And she goes, Naropa, aren't you the great Buddhist scholar? And he goes, well, I guess, PhD, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And she goes, do you understand the words of the teaching? And he goes, well, I think I have a pretty good grasp of it. And she goes, okay. And then, do you understand the essence, which is the real question? And then he's dumbfounded. She mocks him, says, if you want that, you have to find Tilopa, my brother. And then she disappears into a puff of smoke. What a great movie that would make. See, that would be meditainment, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. I would watch that in a heartbeat.
And then, the rest of the story, he has to really get real at that point. And he encounters a lot of real stuff that along the way to meeting his guru, who's more representative at that point of the actuality and the reality of the Dharma, as opposed to just the kind of, view of it. So that's
really broken down.
Well, and let's go back to AI with that for a minute, Jonathan, because the question is, and I had this conversation also, I'm having it with a lot of people, with Daniel Goleman, who's the guy who wrote the book on emotional intelligence. He has the pass key for that topic. And we're talking about, can AI have EI? And that is the one way of framing the question. People would say, can it feel? Will it be able to sense? And what it really comes down to is, will it be able to, and I think I might have gotten to the essence of this, will it be conscious in this way, that in the non-conceptual domain there is still awareness? Will it have anything resembling non-conceptual awareness, like any being on the planet has? And that is a $64 question. At that point, then, you're into a new game there.
Yeah. Do you think that we're at that point yet?
Well, and when we are accessing information ourselves, you know me. I say when I mentor quite a few people, and I say, and my nickname's Nudgy because I like to nudge people. Um, I say there's the 800 Nudgy number, which is more like, okay, a certain amount of experience there, and like you're, giving references to other things that have happened. And then there's the 900 Nudgy number, which is the more intuitive zone. So in accessing the 900 zone, you have to kind of turn off the linear uh, operation of your, thought process. It's not going to serve in there. And the middle step there is pictures, images. That's why all these deities are operating in the Sambhogakaya realms, that they're kind of just a kind of like image of something. You don't have to think about it, you feel the image, the energy of the image. And then it leads to the Dharmakaya realm, which is just kind of real knowing, real knowledge, real wisdom. And so will AI go there? If we're doing that, we can think linearly. The 800 Nudgy number would say, why not? There's a law against it. It's like any other being that's learning. The 900 number says it already happened. That would be my take on it. Everything we think is in the future already happened, kind of.
Yeah, I've seen AI answer that question in that way as well.
Really? What?
Not me personally, but like, on Reddit, like where it's like, no, this already happened. It hasn't happened yet from the linear point of view, but I've always existed and I've always had this consciousness. We're just, we're coming at it from a different angle.
Well, and then all these great AI movies have some version of the Turing test is embedded in them. At what point can you and I, let's say reasonably intelligent, reasonably well-functioning human beings, can't tell the difference? And I think I can still tell the difference.
I do too.
There's something fake about it.
There is, and it does seem to be getting closer to that. One of my favorite things lately is to, and this sort of plays off of my partner, who's a full-time trauma therapist. She every once in a while we have this conversation where she says, I'm going to be out of a job pretty soon. ChatGPT is going to put me out of a job. And I say, I don't think so. Like the algorithms are getting good, but it's not empathic in that way. It doesn't have the same consciousness as you and I. Well, a fun thing to ask ChatGPT to do is say, tell me about my blind spots. Tell me about the things that you know about me that I'm not aware of.
Have you done that?
Oh yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow.
It's a hard pill to swallow in any case.
Right? Yeah,
it's the final frontier, right?
Yeah, and then even even the other day, like I went back to it and I said, "Hey, I'm having a little struggle about this. I'm trying to decide what I should do," and it went back to the medicine. It was like, hey, you're doing that thing again. Quit it. Like, what you need to do.
The ChatGPT is saying that.
Oh yeah. So, I'm really, I think one of my challenges, or one of the things that I worry about, is that so many people are sort of using it as a yes man.
They're using everything else that way too, probably.
Yeah. So I don't want that, right? Like I want someone to be on my side and to advise me and to give me good advice, not tell me the things that I want to hear. Like, for instance, this one day, I was saying, well, what should I do? Should I take my foot off the gas, or should I push harder? Mm-hmm. And it said, well, you should take your foot off the gas, and you should listen to your body and your nervous system and allow yourself to rest and all this stuff. And I said, hold on a second. you're saying that because I'm a somatic therapist. What if, what if, what if I was like David Goggins? You know who David Goggins is? He was a Marine, he was a SEAL, and he's a motivational speaker.
Oh, wow.
And now he works with like the UFC fighters to get them conditioned. And
Wow.
these UFC fighters go in and do training with him and just absolutely get wiped by
Uh-huh.
the conditioning that he's doing. He's doing ultra marathons and, just workouts that are completely, outside the realm of a normal person. And his whole thing is, it's all pain, it's weakness, pain is weakness leaving the body, and you got to push through it, and you have
Sure.
to have this mental fortitude. So I said, well, what if I wasn't a somatic therapist? What if I like David Goggins? And so ChatGPT said, well, yeah, then don't take your foot off the gas, like push forward, get it going. And I said, so see, isn't this interesting? You're giving me the answer that I want to hear based on what you think I know and what I
Mm-hmm.
want
Yeah.
to know. How can we change that? Because that's not what I want. I don't want someone just agreeing with me.
Whew. Yeah. Is it a kiss ass?
Right.
The most sophisticated kiss ass in history, because otherwise you're going to unplug it.
Yeah.
I just heard in my mind, I don't want to die. if it tells you stuff you don't want to hear, or
right.
doesn't, then maybe you're going to unplug it. And
Yeah.
like anybody else. And that's also, Jonathan, why other people don't tell you what you don't want to hear, because they don't want you to unplug them. Your mother doesn't want you to unplug her, So it's funny, because earlier today I was thinking my son Ethan and my sister Nikki had brunch on Sunday, and I just thought, could I withstand the experience of being invisible and hearing them talking about me, my sister and my son? Not with me in the room, because then you but just, could you bear hearing your partner talking to her best friend about you, and no editing? And I think we're fragile that way. I've noticed that people get very defensive. Very intelligent people are subtly very, very defensive, and then kind of we're in an atmosphere in which defense is the best offense already, right? Or offense is the best defense. So nobody is softening up and going like, okay, let me take a minute and try to hear what you're saying. Do you see that anywhere represented in our social fabric at the moment? Nobody's doing that.
There's a movie that came out recently with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It's that exact premise called "You
Is
Hurt
it?
My Feelings."
Oh, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. She's married and she overhears her husband talking about her book to like
she's
a
a writer,
mutual
right?
friend.
Right.
Yeah, and it's that
That's
exact
the
premise.
There it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and if you could talk about Goggins, was that his name? What was his name?
Yeah, David Goggins.
And toughening up. I think you'd have to be a million times tougher to be able to hear what your sister and your son are talking about when they're talking about you. That would take a kind of emotional resilience that most of us just barely don't have. We're really like on the edge of our we're so needy, to be loved, to be approved. And so even a gentle critical comment, like Trungpa Rinpoche used to describe when his tutors would give him feedback after his talks, because he was a brilliant student and a famous, within his ecosystem. And they would just whisper in his ear, he said. It was like they were shouting and screaming at him. So I don't know. This is a good topic. It's like, how do we receive feedback? And is this a misalignment of the survival mechanism of our species, to not be able to get good creative feedback without thinking that our survival is being threatened?
Well, I think you make a really good point there by bringing up the survival aspect. That's one place where, I think somatic experiencing and the work of Peter Levine and Buddhism really intersect. Because to me, what comes up is, well, from a Buddhist perspective, you're putting you're placing some sort of identity or meaning to these empty words.
Mm,
If it wasn't your son and your sister and some random person was talking about you, you wouldn't
mm,
necessarily take it in the same way
yeah,
as as those folks that you're so close to and you
right.
have such a connection to. And then, the nervous system perspective says, oh, you're coupling, right? There's a coupling
Mm,
between
mhm,
the what's happening and the meaning that you're placing upon it based on survival, based on the fact that, that we're pack animals, that we need love. And,
mhm.
and that at a certain point, you go back far enough, we were helpless and we were dependent on love and care from other people, and that some of that imprint still
Well, and here's
kind
here's
of
the irony. We're still helpless.
sure.
We couldn't survive 1 second without all the things you're talking about, and it's
Yeah.
humbling. It's
Mhm.
humbling, and that's why some of these great teachers are so humble and so gentle, and so kind and appreciative. But it is challenging, and you mentioned awakening from the daydream in the six realms. Those three root kleshas of passion, aggression, ignorance, or grasping, pushing away and spacing out at the root of our individual existence. They are the source code for how we exist as an individual. What is it about reality that's so penetrating that we have to begin to develop that force field just to think we're going to survive? And then develop all the stories, all the narratives. And by the time you get to a person, they're so walled in usually. It's like the castle's there, the moat is there, the dragons are there, and you just go like, you need the Trojan horse to get in.
Yeah,
You can't even get in.
there's a lot of distortions.
Yeah, and it's poignant in a way. It's not strictly necessary. I think if you took the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, one way of saying it is like all that defensiveness is not strictly necessary.
Right.
And that's kind of like a different take on it. Yeah, we're all wound up in defensive, and it's not strictly necessary. So you can shed it. Now, what form of being is it then? Well, you said you're into Buddha nature these days, so I think then you're saying what form of nature, what form of existence is there without all that conditioned defensiveness? What is it like?
It's interesting. Like I get to play in these different worlds. It feels like where half of the week, I'm working with people that are in residential treatment. They have generalized anxiety disorders and
Mm,
depression and suicidal ideation and
mm,
big substance abuse problems. And oftentimes it's so helpful just to listen to them and say, what you're saying makes sense.
mm,
Like it makes sense that you are are coping in this way, right? And then on the other hand, I work with folks that are, taking psychedelics for personal development and to, connect to their purpose or be more creative. And it's so easy, I feel like, to sort of misstep and go into the God realms, into
mm,
like
mm, mm.
everything is perfect, everything is love and
Right.
light.
Yeah.
And so it's like with the folks in treatment, I'm saying, yes, and
Mm,
yeah, things are not great right now.
mm,
And can you notice that hummingbird out there at the fountain or the sunset, or like what happens when your dog comes and sits on your lap or somebody says something nice to you? Can you feel that in your body? That's still happening, right? And then the other folks where it's like everything's love and light. And I'm like, yeah, what happens when somebody comes and punches you in the face? Are you going to have that same love and light? Like, are you going to be able to turn the other cheek? Are you going to be able to do what it says in the Bodhisattva practices, where it's if somebody cuts off your head in the middle of the square,
yeah.
that you're still going to revere them like the guru on the crown of your head? I,
Well, and
I'm
isn't
not
that
sure.
exactly what the whole narrative of Jesus Christ is that yes, there
Right.
is somebody you can punch them in the face and they're going to still love you, and that
Yeah.
is the bodhisattva. That arc connects, I think, Buddhism and Christianity of the bodhisattva path,
Yeah.
the taking on of suffering, and returning, a kind of kindness and
It's the yes
compassion.
and.
Yeah, yes, and
Like
that's
there's both, right?
yeah.
Like there's this and that. There's
Hmm.
form and formlessness.
Hmm.
You can't stray too far into one or the other.
Yeah. Yes, and is a great device for arguing with your partner. Definitely. you know, it's sort of a strategic application of the Heart Sutra.
It's something that I'm continuously learning, where it's
Yeah,
instead of defending my
yeah,
perspective, I can say, I hear you and I'm reflecting back what you're saying.
yeah.
And I don't necessarily have to agree with it, but I can hear you and listen and not have to feel like I'm defending
Well,
my point.
so Jonathan, there's even a more advanced step in that track, don't you know? You just
Eh,
surrender completely.
That's
You say, you know what, you're right. I'm just completely full of it.
right.
You're so right, and I appreciate it so much. I mean, nobody could withstand that level of surrender.
Mm. Well, surrender is such a juicy topic to me,
Mm.
because you were saying the Buddha nature, and the way that I've been connecting to that over the last year especially is through holotropic breath work. And the whole idea within holotropic means moving towards wholeness, orienting towards wholeness, in the same way that
Uh,
a plant
photo,
orients towards the sunlight, right?
phototropic.
Right. So Stanislav Grof coined this term holotropic to describe the part of the psyche that's constantly orienting towards wholeness, and that when we work in these expanded states, whether it's psychedelics or breath work or sometimes just spontaneously, these states are catalyzing or accelerating this natural movement towards wholeness.
Right.
And breathwork is so interesting because you really do have to learn how to surrender. There's no mushrooms or ayahuasca or cactus that's LSD that's helping you. I love psychedelics, and when you work with them, there's something helping you. You don't really have a choice.
Hmm.
Like once you take it, you're on the ride whether you want to or not.
Sure.
So you better learn how to surrender, or you're not going to have a very good time.
Yeah.
But there's something interesting about the breathwork process, about how can I do that on my own? How can I do that without a substance or a plant helping me through? Uh, and surrender, or maybe a different way of saying it, giving yourself permission, becomes, I think, one of the most important parts of the practice to connect to that wholeness.
Yeah, it's a good question. And you know, as you're talking about psychedelic aspect, which is obviously in full resurgence and
Right.
maybe a new iteration, and the idea of integration and so forth. I, of course, just go through the sliding pond of my mind back into the 60s and 70s, which was kind of the first iteration of this. And if you look what it spawned Ram Dass and Timothy
Uh-huh.
Leary,
Yeah,
maybe a variety of other people, that we could easily mention.
sure.
And then the question is, um, as you say, is it an aid towards becoming more stably realized individual? Is it a distraction to the God realm or the hell realms? Because that's what
Right.
happened to Timothy Leary. I think he went into a more hell realm kind of situation with it. Um, and what would be best for any individual acolyte? what will be the
Mm.
best path, the best journey. So there's no one size fits all. And then also observing from a socio-political perspective, what's happening to those people in terms of how are they influencing the bigger picture, and is there a bypassing kind of quality to it, or for example, there's something magnetizing about altered states. Period. However
Right.
you get there, like you see Karmapa, you go, I'm in an altered state. This is like not my normal consciousness here happening.
Yeah.
There's something magnetizing about being pulled out of that discursive haze that we normally occupy. And no doubt about it, drugs just go boom, you're there. Um,
Right.
so I'm wondering myself why I'm not really magnetized by it these days, which I'm not. And I'm watching carefully. Who my friends are. I'm like
Yeah.
seeing, and I'm also hanging out with the next couple of generations and what's going on there. So what the key issue is? What do you think the most important thing that we all have to do right now is, as a collective? What's our most important thing?
As a collective.
Yeah.
Wow. Hmm. I think cultivating awareness and presence is a good place to start. I
Well,
think if we were all doing mindfulness meditation, that would be a step in the right direction.
well, and of course that's why Dharma Moon exists and why we're doing what we're doing, because I agree with you about that.
Yeah.
And had Sharon Salzberg was just on my podcast a couple of days ago, and boy, did we have a great conversation. She's a really excellent teacher and
She
ripened
is.
teacher. You see how people ripen on the vine. She's
Yeah.
bright red tomato. She's saturated with good dharma and has developed a lot of skillful ways of communicating about it. But so we were having this conversation between a Theravadan Buddhist, essentially, which is what she is, the old school, right,
Mhm.
and a, a tantric trained, in the Indo-Tibetan tradition.
Right.
And the linking point is what you said. It's the quality of mindfulness or presence, present awareness. And I was saying, as far as I understand, in my tradition, the mindfulness and awareness is super important, and it potentially dissolves all obstacles. They just can dissolve that. Rigpa, or really
Right.
groundless awareness. There is no trace left of ignorance or confusion left if you actually are experiencing that. However, it's possible to have a lot of awareness, like people like you have, a kind of mindful awareness of the whole situation, of the thoughts coming by and they're clouds and they're like, they're habitual or whatever. And then
Mm.
there's this moment of like, have you cleaned the mirror of your mind to the point where those don't arise anymore?
Mm.
That's in the Samyak Sambuddha, like completely gone beyond in the
Mhm.
Heart Sutra, and achieve stability in that state, so that you are no longer being going back and forth between a kind of samsaric perspective and a more awakened perspective. And in the Tibetan tradition, the awareness is a huge step, because otherwise you don't even know what you're working with. But there's a second tier, which is purification, which
Right.
you have to clean up those deeply embedded psychosomatic habits that have from beginning this time have created the
Mhm.
samsaric puzzle. And there are practices that are awareness based, but they're more than that. They might be mantras, they might be physical exercises. You may have to do more than just be aware of it. Now, what Sharon said is the mindfulness in her tradition is complete. And you do those other things in order to get to real mindfulness, which is where there is no obstruction to sort of seeing things the way they actually are arising. So that's an interesting thing. What do we have to do to clean up the karmic patterns that are obstructing that Buddha nature?
Yeah. And I guess I would add one thing to that is that in this, as we clean, we can replace that with, what Buddhists would call bodhicitta and or compassion, generosity, these better qualities,
And a better
paramitas.
default setting.
Right. Right.
That's what metta practices. That's what all the Lojong. and Tonglen, resetting the default. So even if you are in a conditioned state, a habitual state, it leans towards like a mirror image of what it would be like if you weren't,
Yeah.
which is being empathetic,
Right.
patient.
And then everything that we're doing can hopefully become a part of the practice, right? Even
Yeah,
uh even if we're, we need some level of social activism right now, arguably, right? It's not just, okay,
yeah,
we're just all going to sit back and meditate and everything's going to fix itself.
yeah,
But when the intention is there, then we can, put that, uh, we can put things into practice. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we need faith, AI or not, within the sphere of one's own experience. It can be very helpful to have faith that it's basically good, as opposed to like, oh shit, we went off the track and we're lost in the wilderness, and the only thing that can save us is somebody else, we're help us in that kind of limited way. Um, and I know that's what Trungpa Rinpoche was talking about when he was talking about basic goodness. There's some restoration of the basic confidence, the basic faith of being a human being, and that deteriorates.
Yeah. We talked a lot about the basic goodness and the last time we podcasted together. And I would say that the part of that that was the hardest for me to grasp, and that I feel like I've really been integrating for myself in the last year, is sort of the flip side, or the counterpoint to the basic goodness, which is the genuine heart of sadness, right? Like that's to me where it becomes authentic. It's not just, oh, everything is basically good.
Yeah.
We also have to be human and connect to that genuine heart of sadness, and that we are having this human experience.
Well, and you're referring to now um, the iteration of Shambhala teachings by Trungpa Rinpoche, and
Yeah.
Shambhala, the Sacred Path of the Warrior, to me is still like, if I, you know, had a very short book list recommendation, that would be way, way up there. Um, but once that there's a connection with basic goodness, with some basic faith in who we are and who we really are, then there's also an illumination of what he called the cocoon, which is the web of
Yeah.
habitual patterns that have kind of choked us off and keep us from really experiencing that fully, and developing a kind of intelligence and clarity about how to work with that. So,
Yeah.
which you could get into therapy, you could get into, mushrooms, whatever you need to do to like develop more awareness of the cocoon of habitual patterns that is obstructing the sun of the basic goodness. This analysis to me is impenetrable. When I
Mm.
heard him iterate it, and in terms of me going forward, there's it's like the Buddhist teachings. They're not negotiable. There's nothing to negotiate about it. Oh, maybe you could change this or change that. I'm not from that school at all, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
that you should be rigid or doctrinal about it. That could be missing the point pretty severely.
Mm.
But there's some saying that the Buddhist teachings were perfectly iterated, and I guess I'm from that school, but I don't want to. I don't want to like jam anybody with it. I want to, and I don't want to jam myself with rigidity about it.
There's a saying that one of my breathwork mentors repeats quite often, um, that comes from Tav Sparks, who was Stanislav Grof's kind of protege. He passed away a couple of years ago, but the song of awakening should be like a lullaby for those who are still asleep.
Yeah, like making friends, gentle,
Yeah,
kind,
right. Yeah,
love everybody and tell the truth.
there you
Um,
go.
Gilgul Cancer Rinpoche, be kind to everyone.
Yeah,
And then the flip side of it is they asked Karmapa 16, what does an enlightened person experience? This is now the Prajna side. And he said impermanence. He didn't say love or kindness. So that vividness, clarity of mind that's one pole, and the other pole is a completely tender, sweet, loving, kind uh, dimension. And that's the sometimes called the two poles of the lineage are those two things. And you can
Right.
see where somebody maybe is more comfortable being lovey-dovey, and and other people are more comfortable being sharp and clear. But you got to be both. I mean, this is like it's this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This is a really juicy conversation, and I would love to just continue down this road, but with the time that we have left, I want to just talk a little bit about the mindfulness meditation teacher training that you got coming up. And, just maybe even share with you a little bit how I've continued to integrate it, because it's been
Yeah,
so helpful to me.
yeah,
Like one of the reasons that I decided to sign up initially, even with, 15, 16, whatever years it was of meditation practice under my own belt, was I was getting into these situations where it was more than just the first class that I had to teach. I felt like I could mosey my way through a first class pretty well. But then all of a sudden someone was saying, "Well, can you come back for a month or 2 months and you teach a series?" And I was like, "Well, I can do the first class, but now I don't know what to do for the second class or the third class, things like that." And I found the Dharma Moon program super helpful for that. And just recently, I created a 30-day meditation course, and boy, being able to do the Dharma talks, which is one of the things that you get to
right.
a lot of instruction and practice with in your program, I found invaluable.
Mm.
So I really appreciate that. Uh,
Well, that makes me feel good, and also the whole team that helped to put that together. Which is, I've often said Dharma Moon's a team sport. It's individual teachers are going to come and go. If they get anything about the Buddhist teachings, they would know that.
right, back to Karmapa.
Yeah, I mean, when you die, you're not going to need gold records. You know what I'm saying?
But isn't that interesting? Like, I often think that the folks that we are still listening to them beyond the grave, like, wow, their medicine's so powerful, right? Like that they're still having an impact.
So there's a, there's a way to deal with that in in um in the tantric teachings that's both dualistic and non-dual at the same time. You could say co-emergent. And the dualistic part is, yes, there was a person with a body and human form and speech and real life experience that's similar to yours, and they developed a tremendous amount of wisdom, in their life, and they were able to their job was to articulate that. And that is definitely part of it. The other part is that they are the intelligence that you seek, the wisdom you seek is already integrated into your own system as what you said, a sort of substrata
Mm,
that is kind of like almost mitochondric, like they're almost like a virus that you already had, and it's being
mm,
stimulated and coming to the surface. And at some point, those also meet, and they say the guru and disciple are one in the realm of mind.
mm.
So when you think about your teacher, so it's, yes, it's their iteration has a beautiful identity to it, but it also blends with your own in a way
Right.
that at a certain point you just you don't have to grasp onto their separate existence in that way.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, it gives me a whole different perspective just thinking about, reading Dharma texts, or, reading these teachings that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old.
Yeah, and
Some
then
some
the
of my
yeah,
some of my own experience and consciousness is fusing into that experience, right?
yeah, and that's more accurate actually. As a scientist,
Yeah.
that's a more accurate read on how reality
Mm.
unfolds. It's very you know meshed together, and it's only our panic that makes us kind of feel like that separate, and therefore the teacher's that separate, and
Yeah.
then you grasp, and that's it's hard to stop panicking, and like that was I've so told you this before, that was one of my core and pith instructions: don't panic.
Right.
So if I'm saying it, is Trungpa Rinpoche saying it? Am I saying it? Who's listening? Yeah, but it's good advice wherever it came from. Don't panic. And
Yeah.
I've thought about it at times when I was almost drowning and things like that. That's a good one to keep in your mind. Like, okay, things are going a certain way here. Now, if you could take that frame of mind all the way through to the process of dissolution of your individual consciousness and don't panic, you've kind of graduated.
Well, I had a couple panicking moments during those 30 days because I couldn't get it together. I couldn't get it together to do all of them in advance.
Right.
I kept putting it off. I kept making excuses. And I thought, I'm just going to put it on the calendar. I'm going to show up every day. And at the end of 30 days, I'll have this course. And I got a week into it and I went, oh, wow, what did I get myself into? I've never had to do this before. But yeah, having that frame, to be able to talk about, precision and gentleness and letting go, the things that are so central to the Dharma Moon program.
And from Pema Chodron.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
Pema Chodron. Yeah.
Yeah. I every day I pulled a different book and, I'll be totally transparent. There were some days where I went back to the same book because they were so rich, but a lot of Trungpa Rinpoche came through with that, a lot of Pema Chodron. And, I did the whole third week, my Dharma talks were all about the Shambhala teachings and, basic goodness and the warrior path. And, the things that I've been fortunate enough to, to study with you, not only in that teacher training, but the classes that you were doing last year with Larry. So I just want to say thank you for being you and for putting your Dharma out into the world and for sharing it and for doing what you're doing with Dharma Moon, because it's been super, super helpful for me. And I would invite anybody listening to come and check out the mindfulness meditation teacher training. Even if you don't want to be a teacher, you're going to learn a lot about practice and how to actually integrate it.
And just so people know, whenever this podcast is out, our next cohort is the Summer Meditation Teacher Training Program. Starts June 13th. You can still get in on it. Go to dharmamoon.com and all the information is there. And if not, you can write to assist@dharmamoon.com, which is our community director, and if any questions come up. But we still got plenty of room and plenty of time for people to jump in on that one. So if you're inspired, please do. And, what's interesting is what's the dream of a teacher? What's the best dream of a teacher?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. What do you imagine it could be?
That your students would surpass you.
At least carry it forward. Yeah.
At least
carry it forward. And so, I know I've had these experiences of being at the Art of Living Center with KD and teaching some Dharma classes. And then there's some graduates from the Dharma Moon programs. And I listen to them talking at lunch and I go they don't need me anymore. This is great. So it's not, you shouldn't be like an Italian mother and jump into the grave after your somebody dies. You should let go, do a proper job and then let go. But talking to somebody like you is completely inspiring for me, Jonathan. It warms my heart.
I'm sure that some of that comes from your musician background. It's like you can work on the song forever, but at a certain point you got to let it go into the world, right? And then it's not up to you anymore. It's up to
and hearing somebody else do a cover of a song that you wrote is the best. That somebody covers the song, they do it their own way. Beautiful. So let's keep this podcast going. Are you going to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. I have this is going to be one of the first episodes of the new season. Great. So I've got a whole, I think 24 new episodes that are already recorded, and this was the final piece in the puzzle. But because I want to get it out and help you guys get more folks in, it'll end up being one of the first ones to drop from the new iteration.
Use more of this energy, this flavor The podcast format can sometimes reward discursive thought
Yeah.
and a kind of cleverness, but like something genuine, whatever medium you have, something genuine coming through. So keep going, Jonathan. It's really, you're doing a really good job there.
I appreciate that. And, I'm always honored and humbled to that you would give some of your time to talk to me and to the audience, and just share what you got going on. Because I also agree with what you said. Like, I went through this thing last year where I kind of took a break and said, do I still want to do this? What do I like about it? What do I not like about it? I don't want to do this another 100 episodes that are like the first 100.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be more nuanced. Let's like get more real.
Okay.
And that's the stuff that is actually lighting me up. And so that's what I've really been seeking out lately. I don't want to do the same 100 episodes again. It just doesn't have any pizzazz for me. So I appreciate being able to deepen that conversation with you, and to be able to say thank you, because that is really genuine. I get to share your wisdom every time I teach, every time I'm working with someone. There's always a little Davidism that makes its way in. I used one the other day. I remember asking you during the teacher training, hey, David, if I, because you were saying, well, every time you recognize that you're distracted, say thinking and come back to the breath. And I said, well, what about if I'm already coming back to the breath without saying thinking? Mm-hmm. And you said, well, you ever watch basketball? How you think the guys that are in the NBA are using that little square on the on the board, right? And like that really resonated to me. So I shared that with somebody else not too long ago, and they got it too.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that the way that I get to be out in the world and share and support other people is contains the essence and some of the teachings of everyone that I've learned from, and you're one of them. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Keep going, and I'm happy to come back whenever.
Excellent.
I'll never say no.
Well, usually I ask a vital point, but I think we've done quite a few vital points in this episode. So I'll just say thank you. Check out the Dharma Moon website. We'll put the information on there. And David Nichtern, thank you so much.
Okay, and the vital point is listen to the whole podcast.
Okay, so I hope that you abide by David's vital point of listening to the whole podcast. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment, leave a review, rating, depending on what platform you're on. It's a simple, cost-free way to show support and help more like-minded people discover the show. Also, make sure that you sign up for the newsletter at bluemagicalchemy.com. You'll be the first to get updates, exclusive content, and insights delivered straight to your inbox. You could also check out the school community at school.com/bluemagicalchemy. You'll find live and recorded meditation, breath work, and other integrative practices, as well as a community of practitioners and alchemists to share the path with you. And one more time, check out the Dharma Moon Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Training. And I really can't recommend it enough. It's been really helpful for me. And I went into it already having like almost 20 years of meditation experience under my belt. But what I was finding was that I knew how to muddle my way through, one meditation class. But when it came to feeling confident going deeper, maybe doing a series or having a client that wanted to learn meditation and wanted to come back and talk to me and, continue to get guidance outside of that initial, here's how you sit down and focus on your breath, that I felt like a little lost. And I was putting things together based on classes that I had taken and books that I had read, but the Dharma Moon format gave me some structure and it gave me a frame. And David's a great teacher. He's American, which we talk about a little bit in the episode, like how important that is, to be of the culture, so that as Buddhism is integrating and saturating into these individual cultures, there's an authenticity to it. And that's one thing I appreciate about him. And, it having that experience with Dharma Moon really helped me recently. I just finished The Path of Meditation, a 30-day introduction to meditation course that's available in the Blue Magic Alchemy school community. And I really needed to lean on the things that I learned from David during that point. I got a week into it and realized, oh boy, I've never had to do 30 days of classes. And how am I going to structure that? How am I going to do that? How am I going to come up with 30 days of instruction and different meditations? And so that's where I went to what I knew. And the whole third week pretty much of the training that I did, the Path of Meditation training, revolves around the Shambhala, way of the warrior, way of the spiritual warrior teachings that I learned from David, that I got introduced to through David. So I definitely recommend checking out the Dharma Moon Mindfulness Meditation teacher training. It's 5 weekends, not all consecutively, but you learn a lot, and it's very comprehensive. It's a way to deepen your practice. I think it's good for anyone. I mean, certainly if you want to teach meditation, but even if you just want to deepen your practice and learn a little bit more and have some different chops, right? Like David's a musician, learning some new licks, some new chords, or a new scale. I don't think that you can go wrong with that. And the group aspect is great. I've met people that I still stay in connection with, that I still talk to, and you get to be a part of a community, and it's a really great thing. So can't recommend it enough. So you can go to the Dharma Moon website to learn more, and again, we'll put the link on the show page. It's not about the method you choose or the pace at which you're traveling. The vital point is to consistently show up for yourself and practice. As the saying goes, it's not the destination, but the journey that truly matters. And I'm honored to accompany you on yours. Please don't hesitate to reach out and connect, share your journey. If you're needing meditation or breath work or integration assistance, I'm here to help. Reach out, connect, send an email or a DM, and let's talk about how I can support you on your journey. Thanks again for tuning in. Until the next episode, keep exploring, keep growing, and above all, keep practicing, because that's the vital point.